Alright, so here we see decorated pieces of marble. Look at the fine carving. Look at that. And follow me, please. Look at the sign here. You'll see what I've mentioned earlier, the wall at the back of the stage. Look at that you don't see anymore here. The scanner fronts, right? And here is the stage, and this whole thing is gone. You do the decoration of the crosses. They were added later when the city became a Christian city. Okay. So from being a pagan city, Roman pagan city, now it became a Christian city. Also look at this thing, it's called sarcophagus. Sarcophagus is a Roman coffin, and it means, the word itself, it means flesh eater. That's the meaning for the Latin word sarcophagus, flesh consumer. And only there is a name and the decoration of the cross. He was the bishop of Caesarea at that time in the 5th century, one of the bishops of the city. Okay, so look here, all the columns we see. By the way, this is granite. Look at that. This is granite right here. Okay. Granite from Egypt, the marble from Greece. So why do we call it the Byzantine period, right? So here, not only here in Europe, end of the Roman time was the beginning of the Byzantine. We're talking about the same Romans, but now a different religion. Constantine, when he became the emperor of Rome, he decided to move the capital from Rome to a place called Byzantion. That's, you can hear the name Byzantion. Byzantion is the town of Istanbul today in Turkey. But when he did so, he named the city Byzantion with a new name, Constantinople, Constantinopolis, the city of Constantine. It became the new capital for a while of the Roman Empire. Later, after his death, the kingdom was divided between his sons, the Eastern Empire, the Western Empire. So Rome was back to be the capital of the Western Empire, Byzantion, the Eastern Empire. That's why the name Byzantion, and after the city, Byzantion. All right, we go. We'll continue. Similar to Sphinx.
Which at that time was installed.
The place we're going next, over the wall, was open to groups only in 2000.
Nowadays they can be using cardboard.
Big reservoir of the shore under the Mediterranean. Other three, it's cool. Yeah, underneath the Mediterranean. They're going to export
Israel
now.
is a big gas producer.
Something else. That's what they did with this piece. So originally the stone used to decorate the entry to a structure with things nearby the theater. And what it says, this is very important, the writing here. Pontius Pilatus, the prefect of Judea, the governor of Judea, erected the building dedicated to the Emperor Tiberius. So notice this was years after Herod's time, right? So the first time ever that the name Pontius Pilate was discovered in archaeological sites. So we have like a physical evidence, right? Because even though he's mentioned in the Bible and by historians, for some people it was not good enough. You know, people were saying, maybe it's just a myth or something like that. And now we have, see, so this is just to give you an opinion of how archaeology confronts the Bible like the Bible. I like to say the other way around. The Bible
There, let's take your picture.
Remember, after the death of Herod the Great, his kingdom was divided to three. Judea was under the rule of his son Archelaus. Archelaus is mentioned in the Bible. If you all remember, when the family, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus ran away down to Egypt, and they came back and they heard that Archelaus is the king, he was the son of Herod, they decided not to stay and went to Galilee, up north. So Archelaus, he was the king for only a temporary time. He was not a good king for the Romans. They were not happy with him. So he was gone. And from the year 6 AD, for a long time, Judea, up until 41, Judea became a Roman province. Okay, and then remember, we have the kingdom of Herod Agrippa for 4 years, and then again became a province. What is the difference between a local kingdom and a province? Local kingdom ruled by a local king. Okay, province by a governor or different governors who came and left from Rome. He was a Roman. Okay, so one of them was Pontius Pilate, and all of those governors who came and left have lived here in this palace, including Pontius Pilate. So we know the time frame, 26 to 36. And he was the governor who condemned Christ to death, and he did it where? Not here in Jerusalem. We'll talk about it much, of course, we'll be there. Now, so how come he went to Jerusalem? Because he had to be there, especially during the main festivals of the Jews, right? Every Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacle, as I think you all know, thousands and thousands of pilgrims came up to Jerusalem. Because temple, there was only one, right? The temple in Jerusalem, the only place to offer sacrifices was Jerusalem. So during those three main festivals, thousands made their way to Jerusalem. The estimation is that around 200,000 pilgrims came to Jerusalem during those times, okay? Each and every time. So the potential for riots, rebellion in Jerusalem was enormous during those holidays. So the governor had to be there and to watch what was going on. So he used to travel up and down between here and Jerusalem many times. All right? So this is so it was open to the air, but around there was a walking area. See, a covered area. Look at this like sidewalk. You see only bases of the original columns. Notice to the right, these are original columns, but what you see standing, it's not. You can tell it's no right. But the columns would have been much higher, and they were holding over the sidewalk a roof. So you see, all around there were structures, and the facade of those structures was the same height as the columns, even higher than that. So between the buildings, you see not much is left, and the columns over the sidewalk, there was a roof. Is that clear? As it shows here. So just protection from sun, rain, but here it was left open. Very impressive entry. Where to the palace. We'll go and see. Now all along the coastal plain of Israel, you can find underground, you can find water. It's the active aquifer. And so several wells were discovered like the one here. This is an active well, just a bit deeper.
Beautiful.
Not much is left from Herod's palace here. But still quite impressive, trying to visualize it. Looking down here, you can see some of the original mosaics like on the ground. This is the temple ground. You see the mosaic
Wow. Yeah.
Another piece here, but it's left done. So all those mosaic floors were decorating different room sections surrounding what? A swimming pool. At the very center, you see the swimming pool. Those palaces, we believe, served later the Roman governors, including Pontius Pilate. Okay, so pictures, and then we will go to the right. In the 19th century, it's a mosque. You see, there was a small Arab village there in the 19th century. So you see here structures from different time periods. See, not all it's from the days of Herod, but the harbor, and we have talked about that, right, used to be over there. Look how far. you don't see the breakwater. What you see now, it's Crusader time. The Roman breakwater built by Herod, it is just a little bit before that. And it goes from the shore in far, much further on. I think you can see like this dark spot there, you see? It's all underwater. And the other one should be behind it. So altogether it was a big, like 2 arms, right? Coming out from the seashore, big, the harbor would have been there. And also the temple built for Jupiter was over there, like facing the harbor. Now all that we see here was the hippodrome. The hippodrome of Caesarea. The seats, look at that, they are intact, right? And then we see like a structure in the middle, we see built over the seats. Because look at the seats continuing on, you see that? There is like a white column leaning on the wall there. This is a church. See, built again 400 years later, a church built on top of the seats. So at the time of Herod, there was nothing there, right? Just the seats went all the way there, and then you see on the seaside, where the people are walking there, this would have been the left wing of the hippodrome, so there were more seats here, but they are gone. All the left wing with the seats are gone.
Wow.
All right, so you can see the horse track for the chariots. Did you watch the movie Ben-Hur? So you know what I'm talking about. There were actually 2 U-turns, one down here and another one at the far place. So the chariots had to go around to complete 7 laps, back and forth, 7 laps. So there is a U-turn here. We can go and have a closer look. Washing everything to a septic, and you see the little channel here for cleaning, for washing hands, and you see the little channel here.
Separate from the other channel, that's all I care about.
The church's walls here because they started building into the.
Yeah, this should be gone. That should be gone. That should be gone. All right.
Amazing chariots.
So at some point it was not used as a hippodrome anymore. But it started at the days of Herod the Great.
I think they said they want to watch us race, me and you.
What would have been the ground covering here?
Like that.
Like
Sand.
so chariots in the sand.
Yeah, more like a gravel or sand. Yeah.
We'll wait. I'll give you 10, Mello, if you do it. I knew I was
So do you see all the U-turn right here? You see, this is the center, and notice to the right it was redone, but you can see another box seat. You see that? The wooden part? Yeah. This was the box seat again, the dignitary. The Spanish historian, I guess you've heard his name, and I'll talk about him more. He wrote that when everything was completed in NBC, Augustus himself came here. He was invited by Herod the Great to show him, of course, to impress him. And he came with the chief general of the Roman army, Marcus Agrippa. Notice the grandson of Herod was named Agrippa after him. He was actually a personal friend of Herod the Great. And so they sat down right there, see, watching the games. Josephus wrote for like 10 days there were games going on, like Olympic games. The difference he did here, it was used not only for chariot races, but for sport competitions as well. Usually it was only for races. So the chariots normally had 4 horses. The name for it in Latin, quadriga. Quadriga, the chariot with 4 horses. So a U-turn, so this obviously was a very critical point, the U-turn here over there. There was like a duck. Yeah. With aqua. Inside of it. Why? Because all this car they go to Carmel. Okay. And then we we're switching, okay? Yeah, so what we're doing right now, we're heading instead of Carmel to Megiddo first, and then Carmel. Because I've heard that all those groups are going to Carmel first, and so we want to be there earlier to visit the site, then to have lunch. We'll have lunch at Megiddo, and then go to Carmel. When we go all over the world. We don't get much, depends where. Again, in the desert, much less, like maybe 4 or 6 inches. On the mountains, 22, 24 inches in a good year. So it can change.
is $7.49.
The main water source of Israel, it is indeed underground water, and also this desalinization water from the Mediterranean. And the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee, it is a big reservoir for Israel, water source, fresh water. So who came and took the land in 1917 away from the Turks? The Brits, the British and the French. End of World War I. They've conquered the Middle East area. That's how the war ended, with the defeat of the Turks, right, in Germany. In November 1916, so just before the end of the war, the British and the French signed an agreement. It is called the Sykes-Picot Agreement between representative of the foreign officers from both countries, who will control what. Okay, so France got the northern area of the Middle East, where is today Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, parts of it. Great Britain, Israel, down Egypt. Those countries did not exist at that time. But they were later the one who drew the lines of those countries, and indeed Syria, Iraq, that got their independence only in 1946. Egypt was the first country to get independence in 1922, and Israel later in 48. So very important to know that those countries did not exist at that time. Okay? So there were Arabs living all over the Middle East, including here. And later, those countries actually were formed by those superpowers at that time. Now we can see in a way the results of it. They were not aware of what they were doing because they put those Sunnis and Shiites together, and they don't get along so well. You see what's going on, yeah, in the Middle East. By the way, later maybe I'll find the time to explain to you the difference between Sunni and Shia. Okay, they hate each other to death, more than even they hate the Jews. It's a big difference between Muslim Sunnis and Muslim Shiite Muslims. So as long as there was no like a strong regime in the form of Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi in Libya, they had a very tough regime and managed to control those people. But when the regime is weak, and they will fight against each other.
Wow.
That's what you kept hearing all about, the civil war in Syria and places like that. That's the bottom line. It's actually the conflict between those groups. So in 1917, when the British were here, they've decided again to give independence or to form those countries, and they also recognized the Jewish people, saying the Jews also have the right to have their place of their own here in Palestine, because of the history and of course the Bible, and they thought it would be also the right decision. Remember, by then there were already thousands of Jews here who came from Europe, even before. So they came up with this official document, and I guess you've heard about that before, the Balfour Declaration. Lord Balfour from England, he was actually the representative of the British government back then, saying indeed the Jewish people have the right to live here in Palestine and to have their own state. Many will see it in it as the beginning of the conflict between Arab and Jews. The beginning of this big conflict we are still facing today started then with the Balfour Declaration in 1917. Because from the start, the Arabs didn't agree with that, saying the Jews shouldn't have their own state, they have no right to be here, they have no history here, and so on and so forth. So the conflict began. I mean, at first it was just clashes here and there, 1921, 1929, but then there was a big event in 1936. Notice, before the war, before World War II, there was a big war here in the land. It's called the Arab Revolt, the Arab Rebellion between Arabs and Brits. the Arabs decided to fight against the British because they wanted to stop the Jewish immigration. They didn't want them to agree to let the Jews to come in. And as a result of this conflict, about 5,000 Arabs were killed, 5,000, few hundred British soldiers and Jews as well. They were like in between, but yeah. And indeed the Arabs in a way did succeed, because the Arab rebellion changed the mind of those British. Actually, they've turned their back to the Balfour Declaration. It shows the city of Megiddo at the time of King Solomon and King Ahab. But underneath, we have, remember, ruins or layers of ruins from before, Canaanite time. The history of Megiddo began, we think, around the 4th millennium BC. So the early city would have been where? Way down. It was established on the bedrock, and then whenever the city was destroyed, a new city came on top of it. Perhaps the way we'll have to think about biblical mounds as a big onion with layers. Okay. Now, according to what we know, the city of Megiddo was destroyed, rebuilt 25 times, remember? It's amazing. So it's not a natural hill. So you can even say it's a man-made mound, you know. And but you don't see all those layers because like at least 7 or 8 of those layers are gone. Over time, eroded, gone. So look at that. Yeah, in relation to it, we are now here. This is us. Okay, we are here at the base of the hill in this building. Later we will walk out, we will see the whole thing. Nice toy, huh? Okay, so as you see further down, there are ruins much older, right? Canaanite. So when we go up there, we will see or layers of ruins from different times, mainly Canaanite. So 3rd, 2nd millennium BC, and above the time of the Israelites. The time of mainly King Solomon and King Ahab. That's what we see today. So when we leave this place later, we're going to also to look at the map over there. But when we'll be out, we're going to follow this walkway, this trail, up to here. And when we'll be here, we'll see ruins of 2 different city gates. The lower one, older, Canaanite, and the one above here, the time of King Solomon. So the time difference between the two, it's plus minus 500 years. Okay? So the lower you go, the more ancient it is, right? So this is the time of King Solomon. We'll see the ruins of the gate. Later we'll go and see this, where actually was the palace of one of his officers. And we will look also at the lower level is here. We'll see ruins of pagan shrines and altars from Canaanite time. And then the plan is to go all the way to here to see this thing, a grain silo. A grain silo from the days of Jeroboam II. Not the first. The first king of Israel was Jeroboam, right? So the second. So this is like 850, around that time, BC. We'll continue to here to show you the ruins of those long structures would have been stables. So from the days of King Solomon and later the days of King Ahab, this became a chariot city. So there were many chariots and horses here. So we'll see the ruins of those stables. And this big square, you can still see there is a wall goes around, the place where they used to work with their horses to train them. We call it the exercise ground. So we'll have to think about Megiddo at the time of those kings more as a military base, an army base. And who have lived here? Only the